Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies and characters that make us feel seen. My co-host today is one for the books, a real page-turner if you ask me. It's Traci Thomas. Traci is the creator and host of the critically acclaimed literary podcast, The Stacks, where Traci and guests discuss books that have changed their lives. Traci is also a contributor to NPR's Here and Now, a columnist for She Reads, and the creator of the LAist Live literary series, One for the Books. You can also keep up with Traci's Substack, Unstacked, where she dives deeper into books and also discusses topics outside the literary world. So much to read into. Traci joins Feeling Seen for an interview that is sure to blow you away. We are talking books, unlikable characters, and the 1939 historical epic, Gone with the Wind.
Traci Thomas, what do the people need to know about you before we get started, other than you have interviewed my all-time idol, Angelina Jolie, and I sit in lifelong jealousy of you for this thing?
Okay, well, that's all you need to know.
Wow.
No, okay, here's what you should probably know about me. I don't know. What do people normally say?
I feel it's pretty random what people say. Sometimes it's like some people say a fact or I'm working on this thing now. Like it really kind of is and some people just don't know what to say. Honestly, some people are like,
I'm a Leo.
Oh, so
I think that might be important to today's conversation.
Are you? That is so important with this character. Wow, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are you on Twitter person or have you been in the past?
I used to be on Twitter until a psycho took it over and ruined it and changed the name and is a fucking asshole. So I'm not anymore.
I only ask because one of my favorite prompts that has ever gone around in all my was the day there was like an astrology prompt where it was like a group of X sign is called Y. And like a group of Gemini is called one Gemini. I'm a Gemini. This made sense to me. A group of Aries is called an armed robbery.
Okay.
One of my favorites was a group of Leos is called a pageant. And I got a very, to me, humorously hearty response when I posted that a group of Leos is a problem for me personally.
Okay. I was going to say a group of Leos is called a mirror.
Yeah. I have my wife is a Leo, which is no surprise to me. My most either fruitful and or volatile and powerful closest relationships throughout my life, almost to a one, have always been Leos.
Leo women, Leo men, or Leos broadly?
Leo women generally, yeah.
Okay, because I got a thing for Aquarius women and I got a thing for Taurus men.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think Leo men, I maybe avoid them. Maybe it's a subconscious thing where I'm like, no, I can't do that.
I don't know that many Leo men, to be honest. I know some, but not closely.
That's why I'm thinking maybe I subconsciously avoid them because I don't think I know any Leo men.
I don't know. Maybe they're not so great.
And that feels like it can't be an accident. Like there's only so many months in a year to know people with birthdays.
Well, apparently Leo is the most populated sign, allegedly. I have a friend who's like really into astrology.
Okay.
And he's like one of those people who like brings it up he's also a Leo, actually. He brings it up all the time. He'll be like, oh, that's because you're a Sagittarius. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what that means. But he was saying that there are more Leos than any other sign. And I think it has to do with work like Christmas time conception.
Winter, Christmas, cold, dark. Yeah.
Something like that. Or like Thanksgiving, Christmas, like holiday season.
Yeah.
Like we were conceived. So there's a lot of us, which I guess makes sense. But also, I don't know if that's true or it just feels like there's a lot of Leos because we're everywhere because we take up the most space.
That's true. Is it reputationally overrepresented?
Yeah, I think both. I think the kind of person who is a Leo will take up the most space possible, which makes it feel like we're everywhere.
And Gemini is an air sign, so it's breathing the oxygen
into the fire.
Yes,
and we are consuming.
Yes, hence the like most like satisfying and or combustible volatile like relationships that I've had in my life.
I love this.
I will say like I'm only. My interest in astrology is as much as people have told me.
Yeah.
Like when people have delivered very incisive assessments, me being like, oh, well, so this is, I'm like, yeah, damn, that's actually pretty true. But I don't do any further reading on my own. I just aggregate the things that people tell me that I think sound like in line.
Yeah.
Leo and Gemini are the best signs.
Okay.
People hate on Geminis.
I'm not a huge Gemini person.
People are tough on us.
Yeah. I mean, Geminis are very unpredictable, I feel. It's the two sides. It's very, it's very stressful.
Well, this brings it back to the very beginning of us starting to talk, because I like the icon, the legend, Angelina Jolie, June baby, Gemini baby, the great company. And Angelina Jolie brings us to movie stars and definitive performances embodied within the top line character that you have brought for us to discuss today. Please tell us who we are going to get into. This is a sumptuous character.
Okay. I'm not even going to do a fucking preamble. We're talking about Scarlett O'Hara as portrayed by Vivien Leigh in the 1939 Gone with the Wind.
What do we care if we were expelled from college, Scarlett? The war's going to start any day now, so we'd have left college anyhow.
War? Isn't it exciting, Scarlett? You know those fool Yankees actually want a war?
We'll show them.
Fiddly-dee. War, war, war. This war talk's spoiling all the fun at every party this spring. I get so bored I could scream. Besides, there isn't going to be any war.
Not going to be any war.
Why, honey, of course there's going to be a war.
If either of you boys says war just once again, I'll go in the house and slam the door.
But Scarlett,
Don't
honey.
you want us to have a war?
Wait a minute, Scarlett, honey, please. We're sorry.
This was my first watch of Gone with the Wind. I had seen.
Had you read the book?
No, not
Okay,
read the book.
This was your first. You had no Gone with the Wind anything.
I had seen clips of Scarlett O'Hara. I had seen clips of this performance, and I was so bowled over by what she does.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It was no shit, Gone with the Wind. Yes, towering cinematic achievement, so many things to say about it, so many caveats and asterisks. It is one of the great existences ever captured on screen. Vivien Leigh in this role.
It's unbelievable. I want to say this again, and we can talk about this. This movie is extremely racist, okay? It has a lot of problems.
I was, even after everything I'd heard, I was actually gobsmacked at how racist it is.
It's really bad.
I was like,
it's really bad.
This is why there's a disc, because obviously a lot of old movies with a lot of problems in them where it's ooh, rough. But I was like, I can see why this one needed an actual disclaimer at the front. Because it is actually longing for, not just presenting a world as it existed, it is romantic for the world that previously existed.
Yeah. And I think we should talk about that a little bit just to frame the book and the movie. So the book comes out in 1936. It's by Margaret Mitchell. And it is, at the time, historical fiction, right? It's a look back into the 1860s from a Southern woman who is, as you said, longing for the good old days of slavery and the wealth that came with it for Southerners, okay? But we have to remember, because it's historical fiction, like all historical fiction, it is trying to say something to the audience of today about that time. And the audience of today in her day is post-Depression Southern America. So she's talking about the South will rise again in the same way that people who were really hurt by the Great Depression are talking about coming back from this economic devastation, and that there is this call to all Americans. The reason that it's so successful, in addition to being racist, and America's so racist, is that it's saying we will rise again. We will not be taken down by this thing. And I think that sometimes people forget that this book was written so many years after the time that it takes place. They forget that it's historical fiction trying to say this thing. And in addition to that sort of broader lens of the Depression, of the moment that she's writing it, it's also because of the Great Depression and because of the things that come into place, there is this feeling in white spaces, which we're seeing sort of right now, of, you know, we will not be replaced. There's all these new programs, but we don't want Black people to have rights. This is coming up as, you know, Jim Crow is really ramping up in the South. I mean, it's already been there, but it's like really, it's about to hit its stride, as we know, as it comes to a head in the 1960s. And so she's writing into all of these spaces with this book, and which becomes the movie. And she's trying to redefine what it means and what it looks like to be a Southerner, and how great it was and how beautiful it was. But a lot of what she's
great for everyone, including the property people, the slaves they owned, who were so happy under their benevolent stewardship.
Right, because she's trying to rewrite the story and to make it attractive and to make it feel like these were truly the good old days.
Yeah.
And so all of that, I mean, this is a true historical fiction. Like, it's a true fiction. And what ends up happening is, with the popularity of the book and the popularity of the movie, is a lot of the fictions that she created become truths for many people, right?
Right.
Like, it becomes, she has mythologized this thing so well, and so people are so engaged by it, that a lot of the things that happen in the movie and the book are taken as like fact and truth moving forward. There's a great book called The Wrath to Come, and it is all about the lies and mythology of Gone with the Wind, and sort of how it worked and how these things come to be, and how, for instance, the scene where all the guys like go out to avenge this like attack on Scarlet, and in the book it's like, we're just gonna go out and avenge this thing on Scarlet, or in the movie, but those people are in the KKK.
Right. Okay.
In the movie, it's like, they don't say we're in the KKK. They just like, we're going to go avenge this situation. And like the ways that these mythologies, these behaviors are turned into like, they're the heroes and we're rooting for the KKK, is this masterful switch of perspective that Margaret Mitchell pulls off. I'm pretty sure in the book, which I haven't read in a while, they actually are in the KKK and it's said expressly, but when it goes to the movie, they take that out because they understand like not as great. So yeah. So for people who are interested in sort of the historical truths of the movie, I recommend, and Daniel just told me the author, Sarah Churchwell, I recommend The Wrath to Come, because it's really interesting. And she talks about how some of these legacies from Gone with the Wind are still so present today.
That's such an interesting case for the preservation of truth in conveying the state of what things were, instead of eliding over for the purposes of softening an edge, or like, you know, we don't want to show what was that, or like we want to soften this down because to show the truth, it would be like regressive, or it would be like, you know, this is like that the preamble before Gone with the Wind is like, it was a different time, like these were bad ideas then, they're bad ideas now, we just want you to know we know, that kind of thing. Like, we know that the point of view of this movie is named, but like, it shows the value in an unedited history because of it. I think exactly what you're saying there, of like, because once a key thing, because even in the source text, this romanticization of like, you know, sort of make America great again, the America of the Confederacy, might have still said the KKK, like might have, and then the KKK, but it's like, ooh, you know what's bad for screen, and you know who's not really a hero? The KKK.
Right.
And it's like, see, but that's where the stripping of the actual time does become an issue, because then we're no longer in a history lesson, we're in like a dream.
Right.
We're in a nice, pretty dream. And, you know, and Tara is a beautiful oasis amidst the chaos of a changing world kind of thing.
Well, and I think also like, it's only 3 years between when the movie comes out and from when the book comes out and the movie comes out. And so I think that there is, while they do like make some shifts in that way, I think it also goes to show that even in the time that the book came out, people knew that it was wrong. Like, I think there's this idea of like, oh, it was the 1930s, everybody believed in this. And I think it's really important to drive home that Margaret Mitchell was creating a mythology around the American South and around slavery that was hers and something that she and her community or people believed in that was not necessarily widely held even at the time. Because just 3 years later, they're like, can we edit this? Or like, let's change this line. Let's take this part out. And I think that that's like really important to know, because so often it's like, oh, well, it was a different time and nobody knew better. And it's like, well, 3 years later, they knew better about some of this, right? And I think people forget that like this movie was a huge success, even though people knew that it was not the truth. And I think that to me is like one of the things that's so fascinating about this movie and why I love it so much and why I love Scarlett O'Hara so much is that I always knew. I mean, I've seen the movie too many times to count. It was the thing that me and my dad used to do, which is so weird because my dad was born in 1935 in the American South. And he loved this movie. And I know a lot of people whose Black grandparents who are around the age of my dad who also love this movie. Like my dad loved this movie. And I don't know why. I don't know what it was about the movie at the time that it came out. Maybe it was the spectacle. Maybe that it was just this big, huge, famous movie in a time where movies weren't coming out every 5 seconds on streaming.
And its grandeur is so in contrast to a Dust Bowl America, like in gorgeous Technicolor, like
the costumes, the set design, just like the whole thing is just so over the top. But I don't have an answer for why, but I do know that all my dad's entire life, this was a thing that he and I loved to watch together. And I think that that's really interesting because my dad was also obsessed with like, this is racist, that is like, it wasn't like he didn't understand what was happening. And so that's the thing that I think also makes me love the movie is that I just have never been able quite to figure out what or why is so attractive to people who know better. But I do think that people who know better also still love this movie. Like I know better and I still think Scarlett O'Hara is the cream of the crop as far as characters go. It's like her and Lady Macbeth are my two heroes.
It is incredible to watch a character never change in how cruel she is and bitchy and judgmental and self-serving, and yet through the strength and depth of the performance of Vivien Leigh, she has such a rich arc.
It's amazing.
Because she does, but like in a lesser performance, it would be like, I guess I'm just like enjoying her eating every scene and just like shredding people. And she'd be more like, she would be more like a delicious villain. But she's somehow not the villain of this movie, despite her inability to behave as almost anything other than a villain in most situations, especially with the contrast of the Millie character, who is so pure and so in the perfect demonstration of all of the flaws of Katie Scarlett.
Yeah.
And yet, even in the contrast where you're given an example of the higher road to take, you still are with Scarlett.
Come and say hello to my cousin Melanie first.
Oh, do we have to?
She's been looking forward to seeing you again. Melanie. Here's Scarlett.
Scarlett. I'm so glad to see you again. Melanie Hamilton, what a surprise to run into you here. I hope you're going to stay with us a few days at least.
I hope I shall stay long enough for us to become real friends, Scarlett. I do so want us to be.
We'll keep her here, won't we, Scarlett?
Oh, we'll just have to make a biggest fuss over it, won't we, Ashley? And if there's anybody who knows how to give a girl a good time, it's Ashley. Though I expect our good time to seem terribly silly to you because you're so serious.
Oh, Scarlett, you have so much life. I've always admired you so. I wish I could be more like you.
You mustn't flatter me, Melanie, and say things you don't mean.
Nobody could accuse Melanie of being insincere. Could they, my dear?
Oh, well, then she's not like you, is she, Ashley? Ashley never means a word he says to any girl.
Okay, let me ask you this. This is your first time watching it. What did you think of Mellie? Were you rooting for Mellie? That's Melanie. She's the she's the cousin of Ashley, who's Scarlett's great love interest, but they're engaged, Mellie and Ashley. So I'm curious what you made of Mellie.
I really liked Mellie, and then I was waiting to dislike Mellie because I was waiting for her to I was kind of waiting for her to sink into being pathetic. But she is confronted with the choice of decency too many times and actively chooses decency as opposed to naively falling into decency, to where I was like, no, this is who Mellie chooses to be. Like, no matter, like, even when she sees the truth of Scarlet, she's not rejecting who Scarlet is, but she chooses to see the heart of Scarlet when nobody else would choose to do so. And when Rhett Butler, when not Cary Grant, it's Clark Gable? Clark Gable, sorry about that. When Clark Gable's even like, I see you, Scarlet, like, we're both terrible people. That's why we belong together. We're horrible people.
Love that scene.
You know, I've always admired your spirit, my dear. Never more than now when you're cornered.
I'm not cornered. You'll never corner me, Rhett Butler, or frighten me. You've lived in dirt so long you can't understand anything else. And you're jealous of something you can't understand. Good night.
Jealous, am I? Yes, I suppose I am. Even though I know you've been faithful to me all along. How do I know? Because I know Ashley Wilkes and his honorable breed. They're gentlemen. That's more than I can say for you or for me. We're not gentlemen. And we have no honor, have we?
And Mellie's kind of like, well, I'm not going to let her off the hook, actually. Like, it would be easy to say Scarlet's a terrible person, but that would be like giving in to the easiest route that Scarlet could take. And like, no, I bet I know Scarlet has more in there, and that challenges Scarlet to go beyond her, I think, instinctual capacities for what decency she has to provide that in the presence of Mellie when she's able to, which is not often.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So as I said, I watched this movie a million times. As a child, I started watching it and I always loved Scarlet. And when I was younger, I hated Melanie. Hated her. I found her to be so boring. What a wet blanket. Like, she's so nice. She's just gonna choose the right road. Like Scarlet, I love you. Like, whatever. As I have watched it, the older I get, the more that I have this place in my heart for Melanie, where I'm just like, what a beautiful person. Yeah. Like, I'm just like, you are like such a pure, like, kind, loving woman.
She is a saint. She's a saint.
And that kind of character generally I hate. You know, like, I just, I'm sitting here talking about how much I love Scarlett O'Hara. So I'm sure you can imagine my feelings towards like pure, kind, loving people. But the older I get, the more I appreciate Melanie as a character, as a foil, and also the performance of Olivia de Havilland in that role.
Olivia de Havilland, you guys.
I used to hate her acting in that. Like, I used to just hate Melanie. I found Melanie to be such a, just like, what does Ashley see in her? Like, that whole thing. Now I'm like, of course, boring ass Ashley wants to be with this boring ass lady. Like, this is a dream. But I think that's more just shows like how much range this movie has. So like, every time I watch a 4-hour movie, I'm like, I have a new takeaway, but also the like brilliance of these like characters together, this Melanie Scarlet sort of juxtaposition. And also that I maybe am becoming a nicer person myself. I hate to say it, but it's possible.
It's time for a page break, but we will be right back with more from Traci Thomas. Then at the end, I will have one quick thing before I go. I just learned what the movie Companion's really about, you guys, and I'm just really excited about it, and you'll know why if you stick around at the end. So hang with me, and I need to just rant for a minute. Thank you. See you soon.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy.
I'm Oscar.
I'm Dimitri. And we are the Eurovangelists.
We're a weekly podcast spreading the word of the Eurovision Song Contest, the most important music competition in the world.
Maybe you already heard Glenn Weldon of NPR's Pop Culture Happy Hour talk up our coverage of this year's contest. But what do we talk about in the off-season?
The rest of Eurovision, duh. There are nearly 7 decades of pop music history to cover.
We've got thousands of amazing songs, inspiring competitors, and so much drama to discuss. And let me tell you, the drama is juicy.
Plus, all the gorillas and bread-baking grandmas that make Eurovision so special.
Check out Eurovangelists, available everywhere you get podcasts, and you could be a Eurovangelist too.
Ooh, I want to be one.
You already are. It's that easy.
Oh, okay, cool.
The Greatest Generation has been going for more than 8 years.
And if you've been Greatest Gen curious, but have never taken the leap, we recommend exploring your Greatest Gen curiosity in a safe, fun environment with partners you can trust. And right now is one of the best times ever to become a new listener.
That's because we just started covering a new series, Star Trek Enterprise, one of the horniest and weirdest editions of Star Trek ever released.
This is your chance to ease into the Greatest Generation lifestyle.
The Greatest Generation, now covering Star Trek Enterprise, the one with Scott Bakula, every Monday on MaximumFun.org or in your podcast app.
Well, and I think that like you IDing with Scarlet as like there is that in like that is so core to Scarlet, like that like when she knows she's gonna go see Rhett to ask him for like money to help like bail out the to pay taxes to the carpetbagger politicians coming in who are like, haha, we're gonna dominate over you now, Southerners. She like tears the drapes off the wall and has Mammy fashion her something beautiful to wear. And Rhett sees her and he's like, oh, it's so nice to see a woman in a beautiful dress. Like, it's so awful seeing these women walk around, everybody looking so frumpy.
Oh, Rhett, I was so distressed when I heard you were in jail. I simply couldn't sleep for thinking. It's not true they're going to hang you.
Would you be sorry?
Oh, Rhett.
Well, don't worry. Yet. The Yankees have trumped up some charge against me, but what they're really after is my money. They seem to think I made off with the Confederate treasury.
Well, what did you?
Oh, what a leading question. Well, let's just talk about sordid things like money. How good of you to come and see me. And how pretty you look.
Oh, Rhett, how you do run on teasing a country girl like me.
Thank heavens you're not in rags. I'm tired of seeing women in rags. Turn around. Oh, you look good enough to eat. And prosperous, too.
Thank you. I've been doing very well. Everybody's doing well at Tara, only I got so bored, I just thought I'd treat myself to a visit to town.
You're a heartless creature, but that's part of your charm. You know, you've got more charm than the law allows.
And it is important to Scarlet to look that. It's important to Scarlet to uphold not only it's important to uphold the idea of who she is, in addition to the reality. And is that something you has Scarlet been an aspirational figure to you at any point? Or has Scarlet always aligned with you as like, I feel this core to my being of who this woman is who I am?
Well, I want to be careful and say what parts of her I might find aspirational. As a whole character, for sure not. She's pretty fucked up. Well, first of all, just to like the thing of her always like wanting to look her best. I mean, the second scene we see her in is where she's getting ready for the barbecue and she has Mammy's tying her corset and she's like, I want to be an inch smaller. Like she's obsessed with how she looks. She hates wearing black.
She's a grieving widow.
So dull.
Miss Scarlet.
I don't care. I'm too young to be a widow.
Miss Scarlet?
Oh, why just go around scaring people in that thing?
You ain't supposed to be around people. You's in mourning.
For what? I don't feel anything. Why should I have to pretend and pretend?
I think the moment that is like the most... Well, look, she's a boss businesswoman. Granted, she is doing slave labor.
Yes.
Like, granted, what she does
100%.
is reprehensible. Like, the choices she makes are absolutely just threadbare depravity. But, like, she does figure out a way to pull Tara out of fucking tax. Like, if you go with the conceit of the movie, which, again, is super racist and fucked up, she is our heroine and she does do the things that need to be done to get to the places, the things that no one else is willing to do, right?
She is a survivor.
Right. And like, and in the sexist world of the 1800s, 1860s, 1870s, she does what no man is willing to do, which like also I think is somewhat aspirational for me of like, you can be beautiful and dress beautifully and also get your hands dirty and go out there. Again, how she chooses to do these things, I'm not co-signing for, but the ideas of her, I do. And I think one scene that always just like haunts me because I'm like, I hope one day to be her, is after she like kisses Ashley at the mill, and India, that fucking bitch. I hate India so much, even though she's like actually probably a fine person, but like fuck India Wilkes all day.
No, India Wilkes is she is the worst character in this
She's the worst character, but also like she doesn't actually do anything wrong. She just hates Scarlett, and hating Scarlett to me is like the biggest sin you could ever, like hating Scarlett O'Hara to me is akin to like calling me a name. So India Wilkes, dead. Jail for her. But India and I think it's Mrs. Mead, they all catch her like kissing Ashley, and then the next day is like that night is his party, and Rhett forces her to go to the party. He throws the red dress at her, and he's
in the most amazing dress anybody's ever
the best dress
seen.
ever. And it's the dress is also so spectacular because it's like doesn't have all the petticoats. It's like sexy and fitted, and Rhett's like, you're gonna wear this, you're gonna dress the part. And they're all singing for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, and she walks in and it like cuts to her, and she's just like standing there looking fucking fabulous, knowing that everyone's talking shit about her. And I just love that moment.
Good night, Scarlett.
But Red, you
go into the arena alone. The lions are hungry for you.
Oh, Red, don't leave me, don't.
I'm not afraid.
And I also now as an adult love it because Melly comes up to her and she's like, welcome, Scarlett. And then she's like, well, please welcome our guest, Scarlett. It's so good that you're here.
What a lovely dress, Scarlett, darling. India wasn't able to come tonight. Will you be an angel? I do need you to help me receive my guests. It's me. Here's our darling Scarlett. Good evening.
Good evening. Why, Scarlett. Good evening.
Good evening, Miss Scarlett.
Ashley, aren't you going to get our Scarlett a glass of punch?
And I just like love that scene because she does show up and she stands there in all her villainy looking gorgeous and just says, if you're going to talk about me, say it to my face. And I love that. I just eat that scene up. So that is like the most aspirational scene, even though, again, it's not, I don't want to have an affair and get caught and have to go to the birthday party. But there's something about that to me that is just like, that scene lives in my head rent free.
It really struck me watching it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, wow, wait, this came out in the 30s and this is Scarlett? Like, I guess I expected like flashes of bitchiness from like the things I expected that the clips I had seen of her were like kind of like when you see the best part of the movie in the trailer and then it comes and goes. But like it is a sort of unrelenting that face that Vivien Leigh makes where she just becomes completely awashed in envy and anger, and that slight change she does with her eyebrows to affect her internal like tumult. I was like, I didn't expect this to be the entire movie of Scarlett O'Hara. I thought there would be like, oh, Red, like, don't you believe me? I love you so much. But that moment never comes almost.
Yeah.
She never wilts.
So I work in books and we talk a lot about characters and books. And a thing that I've discovered is how many people dislike unlikable characters. Like they don't like being stuck with unlikable characters for a book or whatever. And I just don't understand that point of view. Like I cannot relate to it because all of my favorite books that are fiction and all of my favorite characters are always the most unlikable people, especially when they're women. And I feel like we don't get enough good unlikable women. And to me, she's the best because she's unlikable on like in theory, and yet you really like her and you're rooting for her and you're sort of like obsessed with her. And anytime she's not on screen, you're like, boo, hiss, like Ashley, go away.
Why am I looking at
Why
Ashley
is
right
Ashley now? Like doing things like at the barn? Like, ew. It's so dark and dank. That's another thing I came around on. When I was younger, I used to be like, oh, Ashley. And then when I like hit puberty, I was like, boo. I was like, you are the worst.
The most frustrating part about Scarlett is her obsession with
that
him.
she likes him. I'm like,
it's
Rhett
like, bitch,
Butler
it has
is
been
right
10
there.
years.
And Rhett Butler is right there looking hot and rich. And he's so charming. I'm like, and he can speak. And then you like
deal
Ashley?
with your bullshit.
Yeah. Ashley's like such a wet blanket. But I think, I think that's, I guess, his appeal to her. It's like her childhood crush or whatever. But I feel like the first, like early on in seeing the movie, I remember being like, because she's like, oh, will Ashley be there? And you don't meet him for a little bit. And then I'm meeting him being like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you think you're gonna meet
Rhett Butler,
like
yeah.
the figure that is Rhett, but instead he's just and he's sentimental and he's soft and he's reluctant to go to war even when all the other men around him are screaming war, and like that's nice and everything.
Yeah,
but it is like you see her and you're like, Scarlett, you can't possibly think you would be satisfied day to day coexisting alongside this man.
All of her husbands besides Rhett are basically that, because she needs that in order to, like, she uses them as a means to get her things done.
And honestly, Luck's out by the fact that they just keep dying.
Well, it's a dream. It's a dream. I feel like one of the things that I've noticed in my limited film and TV watching is that, I shouldn't say limited, I watched some, but not a lot. Anyways, is that what Scarlett gives us is like a terrible person that is, fleshed out and well written to the point that she's like a total person and you can relate to her even if you hate her. And I feel like and I feel like that is true of like white male characters more recently. Like obviously like Walter White is such a great example. Like he's the fucking worst and we're all like rooting for him. And like Tony Soprano, I think famously, I think like Carrie Bradshaw is another like really good anti-hero.
I think that's a good point.
But I think that we don't have the sort of patience to dislike women on screen anymore, that there's like all like that being uncomfortable with characters or like people being bad is somehow like a reflection of the people who make the thing. Like I hear this a lot with books. It's like, oh, well, the author's so awful because the character did this. And it's like, well, no, the character did this because the author's trying to tell you something. And I think like we can't even like,
yeah, that feels like the Lolita read of like,
yes,
well,
exactly.
Obviously,
right. He's
Nabokov.
a rapist. And so is Vladimir Nabokov because like he wrote this book. And I think I think that there's something has gotten fucked up in the way that art is created now. And I think like it's probably like a lot of like think pieces and like people like us talking about things on podcasts and whatever that get in the way of like creators being able to create these characters, especially for women. But I also think this is true for like Black people or people of color, disabled people, whatever marginalized group strikes a chord with you, dear listener. Probably like you're not happy with your representation either. And I think it's also like this idea of like compliance, that like these groups of people need to comply with like what they're supposed to be to like fit into the mainstream, like white patriarchy, heteronormative, whatever. Just, I don't know. I don't have an answer to any of this, but I do think that there's something about like people being afraid to create certain kinds of characters or not being able to, even if they create them, then not getting picked up or like not getting an editor, not getting books, not getting an editor, or in movies, not getting, the green light or whatever that looks like, because there's this fear that these characters won't be likable, which I just am always so the idea that like we shouldn't make something because someone's unlikable is so crazy to me, because we just elected the most unlikable president humanly possible. Like,
who surrounds himself with just unlikable on unlikable. It's not even like he's burying that lead.
Right. And even people who do like him, right? There are people who do like him. They like him because he's unlikable. They like him because of the fucked up things he says and does. They don't like him because he's their best friend. They like him because he's rich, because he's ruthless, because he's all of these things that Scarlett O'Hara is in a lot of ways. And
transactional and vindictive and superficial.
Exactly. But we do like evil and we do like unlikable people. And so this idea that in art, like we can't have these characters or like these characters shouldn't exist because there's no audience for them is just so it does not compute for me, because we're constantly rooting for bad guys. Like all of our favorite characters, all of the most beloved maybe most iconic characters are that. I mean, Batman's a fucking bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like, we love a bad guy. Most people like Batman a lot more than they like Superman, even though Superman is cute and wears glasses during the daytime. What a hot nerd. But I think that the way that we think about unlikable people versus the way we actually feel about unlikable people there's a huge disconnect in society.
I guess my last question to you would be, in a medium of patience, of more patience in literature, do you find, it sounds like you're finding a similar thing of like books, there even being a sort of trepidatiousness in literature to front and center difficult characters, unlikable characters, and even where there is so much more time and space afforded to the unfolding of a story and an audience that is theoretically buying in to that bigger time commitment. Do you still find that to be the case?
Well, so the thing that's hard about books is there's so many.
Oh, Jesus, God,
and
yeah.
so I read what I'm drawn to, which is almost always unlikable, messy characters. So in my reading life, I don't feel like I'm missing that, but I'm also not drawn to the things that don't have that element, especially because I really personally love nonfiction. So when I'm reading a novel, if I'm reading the fiction, I'm probably like, who's messy? Like I'll just ask people like, what's your favorite messy book? Like that's where I want to be. That being said, though, I do hear so much from readers who all suggest a book that I love that has an unlikable character. And they're like, oh, I couldn't get into it. She was so unlikable. And I'm like, I know, that's the whole point. Like, isn't it great? Isn't she fucking crazy?
My family is obsessed with the show Yellowstone, particularly my mom, and
my mom's into it too.
It was on a couple of years ago, like earlier seasons. I was home around Christmas time, and the Kelly Riley character of Beth Dutton comes up on screen, and she is hungover, evil, mascara running, taking a bath in like a horse trough with a bottle of champagne, and is clearly just like a messy bitch. And I was like, who is that? And my mom was like, oh, she's awful. That's Beth. She's the worst character in the show. I was like, I need to start watching this because I need to know whatever Beth is up to.
Yeah.
And that was my entry point into Yellowstone, was how catastrophic of a character. Like, there was, I think the line that I saw, she was like, I'm the rock that a therapist breaks themselves on when the wave crashes against me. I was like,
yikes.
Well, sign me up for Yellowstone then.
Yeah. I mean, as we're recording this week, as we're recording this yesterday, I released a bonus episode that we called like Inauguration Counter Programming. And it was about an essay by Toni Morrison called Goodness, Altruism, and the Literary Imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about like goodness and evil on the page and sort of like what it says and what it means about us. And while I do like love these evil characters, I'm drawn to them. Like we were saying about Mellie, is like Scarlet is made a greater character because of Melanie, because of the goodness on the page and on the screen. And I think also maybe some of that is what's missing in contemporary art, is like, we will either go full evil or like full pure, but we're struggling to the balance of like, you know, these characters are evil and they're strengthened by the goodness, or they're like made more complicated by this pull towards goodness, and that ultimately there's some relationship between them. And I feel like right now, part of what people don't respond to is that it is a little more flattened.
Okay.
Like the evil and the goodness. I mean, I haven't really spent enough time truly thinking about this topic to like go there, but I do think there's something about the ways that our media is sort of feels a little flat right now, especially on TV and film. Like, it's just like a little too tidy in a way that I think is uninteresting, and maybe leads people to be like, well, I don't like that character because like she's evil. And it's like, well, but could we find a way to make like the evil have to push up against the goodness and like make something happen here?
Well, that is, I could obviously keep going, but I must leave it somewhere. Traci, thank you so much for bringing this movie to me for the first time in my life. I can't believe
you've never seen it. I'm so happy to have brought this to you, even though it's a big mess.
Thank you again to Traci Thomas for an insightful interview. That was what a fan. I would not want to discuss Gone with the Wind with I don't think with anybody, but a literary junkie and a lifelong Gone with the Wind enthusiast like Traci. You can keep up with her on the Stacks, wherever you get your podcast. That's the podcast. And then there is the Substack called Unstacked, where you can also keep up with her there. And now that one quick thing before I go, you guys, I don't remember if I've brought up the companion trailer before, which is, I think it's playing it's opening tomorrow. I might have shouted it out before because great horror coming up, but it's the Sophie Thatcher one. Jack Quaid. The first trailer that came out, it's oh, they're dating, it's cute. And then they're at a dinner table and he sets her arm on fire. And it's whoa, this is messed up. Maybe you guys gleaned what was going on in that before I did, because the final trailer before the theatrical release dropped, making it very clear she's a robot. But in the absence of a Megan 2.0, of a robot best friend horror movie that I was expecting, here's one that I wasn't expecting. This is robot cinema. This is horror cinema. This looks like girl revenge cinema. That I can't confirm. Companion is not only a twisted relationship movie with Sophie Thatcher. It is a twisted relationship movie with robot politics, with robot feminism, with robot liberation, maybe with robot autonomy, probably. And I hope I'm about to see Jack Quaid, who is so good at playing a douche. I hope I am about to see him go full Scream 5 mode and then get killed by a robot that he has been aggressing against. Give me lowbrow ex machina. This is so exciting. We have robot horror cinema coming to theaters in January. God, I love January. Den of Thieves 2, Companion, Sophie Thatcher playing a robot in January? Excuse me. I am having the time of my life. And that's it. That's our show. I just want to get excited about robot horror. You can find us on Instagram at FeelingScenePod, or you can send us an email at feelingscene@maximumfun.org. We are also on Blue Sky, me and the show, so you can either search Feeling Scene, or you can search for me, the Jorker, Jorcru, and that is on X, Twitter as well. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Danielle Glacius. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported directly by you.